Right, I can see most people have entered, I think. So we might have a few stragglers that are joining late, but that's no problem. Right, yeah, thank you for joining us. Hopefully everyone's sitting comfortably, got a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a drink next to you, and let's dive into some content. So yeah, thanks for joining us. We're talking about backup and recovery for Nutanix NDB with HYCU today. So we've got two speakers with on the line. So myself, Chris Rogers, I'm a senior product marketing manager here at HYCU, and then we have Raghu. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, thanks Chris. So I am Raghu and I am a product manager for Nutanix database service, which is called NDB. I've been with Nutanix for about 3 years now. So yeah, we'll talk about the content as we go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, brief agenda is what we're going to be covering today. So, we're going to do a bit of an overview of HYCU, and then Rag is going to take us through the NDB summary, how NDB helps customers, and then we're going to flow into why third-party backup is required for NDB, and then go into the overview about the joint solution between HYCU and NDB, and then hopefully we'll have time for a demonstration, and then we'll make sure we have time for questions at the end. So let's get started, right? So HYCU, so 4,000 plus organizations all across the world. You can see here 78 countries choose HYCU to protect their most valuable data assets. We have over 400 channel partners serving those customers, and backed by some of the biggest names in the industry, as you can see on the screen there. So as we talk about Nutanix NDB, obviously we need to talk about Nutanix as a platform as a whole, right? So HYCU is the #1 data protection platform for all of the Nutanix workloads, right? So obviously we're talking about NDB today, and that's our new release that came out earlier this year. But if we're talking about the whole Nutanix platform, we're talking AHV or ESX upon Nutanix. We're talking NC2, Metro clusters, Prism, remote office branch office, NUS, Nutanix Unified Storage, so objects and files. We cover all of that. We have multiple validated designs and blueprints for various parts of the technology stack. We have the best customer experience. So we have the highest NPS score in the data protection industry of 91. And any of you who are familiar with the Net Promoter Score or the NPS know that it's incredibly difficult to get that score quite high. And especially in data protection where, when things go wrong, normally they're pretty critical to businesses. So, we're really proud of that NPS score. And also, everything we do, we try and do secure by design. So we're the only data protection vendor to have a DISA STIG, which is essentially a government agency in the USA to implement HYCU securely. And obviously, we conform to FIPS 140-2 and NIAP common criteria as well. So all of those things kind of add up to that's why we are the #1 data protection platform for Nutanix. And if we just look at some of the customers that HYCU have, so some great names on there across completely different industries, right? We've got sports teams, we've got healthcare providers, we've got financial customers, all the way through to data center providers, whatever else. Pretty much every single organization that we have on here has a completely different vertical. And the one I've left out in the middle here is actually Nutanix themselves. So Nutanix IT are a paying, happy customer of HYCU for a very long time, and they trust HYCU to protect their infrastructure that obviously is running Nutanix as well. So with that, now we understand a bit more about HYCU, who we are, what we do in the marketplace, how we sit. I'm going to hand over to Raghu to give you an introduction to NDB and kind of give an introduction as to what it is and how does it help customers and everything else. So I won't spoil the party. I'll let Raghu take over, and away you go.
Thank you, Chris. So before I understand that today's session is mostly around data protection, backup recovery, and stuff. But NDB does that and a lot more. So I would just want to set stage and let everyone know what NDB as a product is and what we're trying to do, right? What are we trying to achieve? We're obviously trying to be part of your data-driven transformation strategies, right? And NDB wants to be part of your strategy and wants you to accelerate using NDB, using NDB, right? So as maybe move to the next slide, right? So organizations today are facing a lot of uncertainty, right? A lot of macroeconomic dynamics, a lot of uncertainty, geopolitical situations. But organizations, at least there's one constant that they have to do. They need to keep innovating themselves, right? They have to keep improving themselves. They need to think of newer initiatives, newer digital initiatives, right? With all of these obviously they need to think of their new projects, they need to think of digital tools, newer tools. They need to move faster. They need to find newer ways of making money, right? Obviously, their current products are important, but they need to invest in newer technologies, need to improve their stack, right? To make sure that they are relevant as they move ahead, right? And in between all of these things, right, security is paramount, right? So without proper security, data is always at risk, right? So making sure you're protected from your ransomware attacks and all of these things. So security is paramount, right? But with all of these things that the companies need to focus on, right, there are some challenges that come with all of these things that they need to focus on, right? They need to focus on budgets, right? They need to make sure that they can do more in lesser dollars, right? Spend less and do more. And as they move ahead, right, you don't find as many skilled workers these days. It's very hard to find like IT experts who can handle new technology. And while moving fast, right, they need to make sure that they're constantly updating their old apps, and they need to look at the cloud, they need to look at different vendors. So I think businesses are faced with a lot of constraints, right? I think we can move to the next slide. Just to add a little bit more perspective, right? There, as per IDC, there is supposed to be 750 million new applications that is going to enter the market by 2026, right? And apps and data explosion are basically redefining the way enterprises work, right? Everyone has the sense of how application world works because of it, they're using apps on a daily basis, right? Whether it's banking or ticket bookings or airline baggage tracking, anything, right? They basically using a lot of apps, and they realize the amount of data that is getting generated, right? And there's going to be an explosion of data, right? 181 zettabytes of data consumed every day, right? So, and this is like just growing year on year, growing at a very, very exponential pace. This is almost a 182% increase in just 5 years, right? And all of this data, right? The workload placement is no longer going to be like in an optimal location, right? You'll have to look at different ways. There's a lot of data that's going to be generated at the edge, right? So you have to think about not just your on-prem, your cloud, edge locations. You need to think of all of these things, right? So IDC again says that 50% of the data will be generated at the edge by 2026, right? Um, so as you move ahead, right? So what are the things that you need to focus on, right? You need to focus on obviously building new data-rich applications, deliver capabilities that were never possible before, right? I'm sure that all of you have heard of the latest news, right? Uh, DeepSeek, right, which is making waves in the industry, right? So data, everyone's talking about data, right? So basically businesses need to come up with newer solutions using data, right? Increase customer loyalty, attracting customers, need to delight your customers by having newer data rich applications. All of this you need to do, right, as you take advantage of newer technologies that would automate, right, most of your data management tasks, right? Free up your resources, make sure that most of your resources are being used for building these data rich applications. And of course you need to make sure that all of this is being done in a secure way, right? Security is paramount, and you have to take care of all of these things. Take care of compliance, be in compliance with the external regulators, right, and internal best practices. So basically make sure that all of these things are being done in a very, very secure way, right? So I'm sure all of you have heard of the famous quote that Mark Anderson has said, that software is eating the world, right? But data is eating software these days, right? And I do, and every digital experience is relying on data today. So with all of these things, what are we trying to prove here, right? With new applications, so much of data, let's go ahead, right? We're going to have, and unfortunately it's getting a lot harder, right? More and more databases, right? Applications require different types of databases, more and more databases, right? So as I said, 750 million new applications by 2025, and all of these applications need so many databases, right? So you require your own, I mean, so many databases, different types of databases, right? So gone are those times when people said that I'm an Oracle shop or I'm a SQL Server shop, right? You don't hear that anymore. You hear about customers using, oh, it's a WordPress application, let's use MySQL. I have a different microservice that needs Postgres, right? I have a different service that needs obviously vector DB, right? I need another thing that needs MongoDB. I have a microservices that needs maybe a MariaDB, right? But obviously there you can't replace your proprietary databases like SQL Server and Oracle. So it is important that customers realize the importance that they are using different types of databases, right? And I just spoke about it, right? Databases across environments, right? On-prem, on cloud, on edge, co-located. So there's going to be a lot of databases, different types of databases, and databases across different environments, right? What are the major challenges that we're seeing with so many number of databases? Developers are slowed down, right? So developers are requests for databases within their organizations need to go from team to team. They're slowed down. So a lot of focus on making sure that uh, they have a one-click experience for their developers, improving developer experience, making sure developers are able to get their databases within a few hours, right? So that is basically a very important thing that developers don't get slowed down. The second most important thing, right? DBAs, right? If you have so many number of databases, you can't expect a few DBAs to manage all your databases, right? And not all DBAs have skills for all kinds of databases. A SQL Server DBA is not a specialist in Oracle. Oracle is not a specialist in Postgres. Postgres is not a specialist in MongoDB. So DBAs are and ops teams are so overwhelmed, right? And yeah, database licenses are like skyrocketing. So a lot of people are looking at open source alternatives to make sure that they can save up on a lot of costs. Maybe you can go ahead. Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about what NDB does, right? So I spoke about all of these challenges, right? So basically, NDB helps you manage all of these databases, right? We manage SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, EDB Postgres, MariaDB, and MongoDB. For all of these databases, we have different configurations. We have the standalone configurations, clustered databases, always on availability groups, rack databases. So we support all of these different configurations. And what do we do for such databases? So we help you provision the databases, right? We help you manage your data protection, which we'll talk about a little bit more, and after which we'll talk about how HYCU takes care of data protection as well. So NDB takes care of data protection from a backup recovery perspective, from a copy data management perspective. So that is something that customers derive a lot of value using NDB. And a very, very important use case, which is important that you remain compliant, right, is patching. So your database patching, your operating system patching. So all of this thing is supported with NDB. And all of these things are supported not only via our UI that we have, right? We have API support, we have CLI support, we have our own Kubernetes operator available. We have Ansible and Terraform modules also available, right? And obviously, you can provision your databases and manage your databases on NCI and NC2, right? So through NC2, you can manage your databases on AWS and Azure. So how is NDB differentiated? As I said, right, we support the most popular database engines, right? Not only open source, but also proprietary database engines. And you have the same experience on-prem, colo, or in the public cloud through NC2. For Postgres, we have end-to-end support, right? So we do that as well for Postgres community. Even after doing all of these things, the customer is in full control of their database server VMs, right? So that is something that differentiates NDB from a lot of products, even the cloud and otherwise, right? So you have full control on your database servers and others. So just talking a little bit more on how customers are deriving value, right? So customers see NDB as part of their overall modernization strategy, right? Customers want to modernize their entire database platform strategy. A lot of customers running 3-tier want to use NDB, right? So NDB helps you manage and provision your databases using infrastructure and database best practices. So we have spent considerable hours improving and researching on best practices that work well for Nutanix infrastructure and databases. So customers are leveraging NDB to basically re-platform, basically recreate their entire database platform, right? I spoke about improving developer experience and self-service. So NDB helps you create that one-click experience for your developers and helps you accelerate time to market, right? So your developers can get databases faster, right, with NDB. So while we do this very well, and a lot of very important customers are using us for this strategy, we do, as I spoke about, right, backup recovery and copy data management very well. So copy data management. So we have 0 byte clones, right? And a lot of customers who have been troubled with a lot of storage issues and clones taking up a lot of storage are really benefiting with storage savings from NDB and using our 0 byte clone features. Customers use clones obviously for multiple purposes. They create another reporting server using maybe Active Data Guard and use that standby site or standby cluster to manage their databases on that, or manage their backups, and create a lot of clones for analytics, for reporting purposes, for machine learning purposes, for dev test use cases, for performance testing use cases. So all of these things people are able to use using the cloning feature that we support, right? Audit and compliance, right? So just to give an example, all the banks in India, they have a lot of audit that keep happening almost every month. There are auditors who come, surprise audits that happen. So people come, they say that, okay, give me access to your databases. So clone databases really help, right? So you can clone databases, you can run some masking scripts, and you can share those clones with these auditors who can do a lot of work around that. So I don't want to explain the clone use cases, but I'm sure you understand that how NDB is helping enterprises manage all of these use cases, right? Backup recovery, right? So we support very low RTO and RPO, right? So a lot of customers are using NDB as their primary defense mechanism, right? Using us for the first 7 days of primary recovery, very quick RTO. So as I said, right? So customers are using us as their primary defense mechanism, safeguarding against disasters, ransomware attacks. So I'm sure you all are aware of this, right? There's a lot of focus on ransomware, malware. So making sure that you are able to recover from such situations and having a robust backup strategy is very important. And NDB can be a very primary use case there, right? In helping you stay compliant. Also compliance, as I said, right? So there is different agencies, regulators, and making sure that you maintain certain level of backup on your primary clusters, some on your secondary clusters, on your tertiary clusters. So you can make sure that you are compliant, and all of these are immutable, right? AOS itself. So Nutanix AOS is snapshots are immutable by themselves, right? So immutability is also something that we support, right? And I spoke about patching, right? So patching, the database patching, OS patching, even in patching, customers want to do bulk patching, right? They want to patch hundreds of database servers within few hours. Just to give you an example, a very large bank in India, they did a test a month back. So they were able to patch about 67 database servers within 40 minutes. And so they were attempting 70, and the three that failed. So we were able to roll back successfully to a previous stage, right? Pre-patching, and there was no issues there, right? So customers are deriving a lot of value in the way NDB is helping them doing patching. Obviously, patching, making sure that any security vulnerabilities, the fixes are released. So you're able to patch to the latest database version, to the latest OS minor version that is released. So patching helps you stay compliant, right? And any new bug fixes, new features that are released. So I spoke about backup recovery and copy data management, right? So a very important feature within NDB, we call it the time machine, right? Helps you uh, achieve backup recovery and copy data management, right? So the way Time Machine works is we take storage efficient snapshots, right? And these are disk based or volume based snapshots that we take. These are application consistent. This is based on Nutanix AOS. So for those of you who know or don't know, right? So Nutanix AOS takes disk based snapshots, redirect on write algorithm, right? We do point in time recovery for databases. So I don't know if you're able to see the picture as well, but if you see there's a timeline, right? So the green timeline shows you the recoverability available, and you can basically recover to the second. And the way we achieve or help you achieve continuous recovery is using database native transaction log backups, right? So like SQL log backups or Postgres wall logs or Oracle archive logs, right? So similarly for MySQL, MariaDB, and MongoDB as well, right? So you can set up different retention and schedule, right? You can make sure that you have like you can set up so many dailies, weekly snapshots, monthly snapshot retention. We support minimum 15 minutes of log backup frequency that can help you achieve a RPO target of around 15 minutes. So uh, that is what we can help you achieve using NDB time machines. Uh, you can also, you can also replicate your backups to different clusters, right? So you maintain a few days on your primary, and you can replicate your snapshots and logs to different Nutanix clusters also. So going ahead. Yeah. Okay, I think this is my last slide, and I think Chris had asked me to speak about this, but I think I've covered most of the use cases that Wells Fargo, the third largest bank in the US, wants to use NDB for. So they have run a few POCs with us and saw. I'll talk about the big wins. So they saw about 1,000% improvement in their read write IO on databases created using NDB. I was talking about NDB infrastructure and database best practices that we have come up with, right? So using our databases provisioned using NDB, they were able to see so much improvement. Using our NDB time machine, they were able to recover about 40 terabyte database in 8 minutes. Their main use cases, as I said, modernization of their entire database platform, right? So they're using provisioning very heavily with NDB and also setting time machines for databases for quick recovery and cloning. So this is pretty much what I wanted to cover, and now I think I can hand it over to Chris.
Brilliant. Thank you, Reggie. Thank you very much for that, yeah. And thanks for covering that. Yeah, I did request. I watched a video of the Nutanix .next recording from last year, and I thought that the story was amazing about NDB. So I really wanted to make sure people heard a synopsis of the story that I heard because I thought it was amazing. Yeah, some of the numbers on here is crazy. 158,000 VMs and 128,000 databases. I can't even to imagine how many people that needs to take to manage, right? So yeah, reducing that number is great. So thank you very much, Raghu. And obviously, I forgot to say at the beginning of the call, if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. We'll make sure there's time at the end and use the chat or Q&A function. And obviously, we will be sending out the recording and the slides afterwards as well. So I forgot to say that at the start, so my apologies. So we've heard from Raghu about the great things that NDB does, right, and the resiliency options they have. And we've heard that they can provide a really, really great use case, but there's still use cases and still relevancy to needing a third-party backup provider. Um, and up until now, there were no supported options for NDB, but now there is. So we have data protection for Nutanix NDB with HYCU rCloud. So I just want to run you through the kind of third-party backup use cases. So where would you fit in? Where does HYCU fit into the plethora of data protection that's available for Nutanix customers running NDB? So essentially, on the bottom here, we've got the Nutanix Time Machine, which I think is an amazing piece of technology. And then we've got our third-party solution on the right-hand side. And this is really a spectrum, right? This isn't going to be every use case gets fulfilled from Time Machine or every use case gets fulfilled by HYCU and vice versa, depending on where they are on the spectrum, right? It's going to be a cross-match and whatever best suits that point in time, right? So it might be that, okay, go to Time Machine because you might be able to get the data back from 15, 20, 30 minutes ago, whereas maybe the backup was an hour or two ago, right? So it might be those things. But let's look at some of the primary use cases. So database errors. There's going to be a thing, a drop table or a fat finger mistake, which is my time as a sysadmin. I've made many of those, and you see the panic of heads popping up from desks when something's not working as it should do. We got file or OS corruption. If the database is fine, but the OS underlying isn't, well, we're going to need to be able to fix that, right? We need to figure out how we do that. Biggest one that I'm culpable for, human error. Deletions, you know, tripping over the wrong cable in the data center, powering or something off that you shouldn't have done, deleting something. Those things happen on a regular basis. The compliance use case, Raghu mentioned it in his slides, but compliance is a massive driver for most organizations meeting those compliance and regulations. I'm from the UK, so we had DORA come in really, really recently, right? Pretty much every single webinar and piece of content for the last couple of years has been about DORA and all those compliance issues that the financial regulations are going to have. But it's a real issue for organizations. How do we stay compliant across all of those different regulations that we need? Biggest one that everyone talks about, cyber attacks, right? And again, like cyber attack can be a very small thing impacting one VM, but also could take down the whole site, right? Like Nutanix is immutable, right? What happens if the access to Nutanix gets taken away, right? And you can't access it, or something stupid like that, right? Or the whole data center gets impacted. I heard about a customer who managed to recover their or were about to recover their databases and their infrastructure, but one of the governing bodies in the US decided that the ransomware attack was too unique, should I say, to let them do that, and they wanted to isolate the hardware. They didn't even have anywhere to recover to because all their hardware was taken under wraps and being forensically analyzed because it might have an interest to that government organization. So you can see how a very small thing could turn into something massive as well. And then you've got DR offsite requirements. Yeah, we've mentioned that we can replicate within Nutanix cloud infrastructure and NC2 as well. But what happens if you have a strategy that involves multiple hypervisors, multiple clouds as well, right? So you might want to think about your options there as well. And also archive and long-term retention. You know, everyone knows that we should be keeping copies of data off primary infrastructure on secondary storage, maybe archiving into the cloud or onto tape or wherever else you want to do that. It's not really efficient to keep 7 years worth of data on SSD storage, right? It's not a great use of storage resources. But as I said, all of these use cases can be fulfilled by varying parts of this. And it's not going to be a one size fits all. It's not going to be every single database error you're going to fix with Time Machine or every single cyber attack you're going to fix with HYCU, right? You're going to be using them in tandem and making sure they work together. And that's one of the key pieces of the HYCU solution is that we've worked in tandem with Nutanix and the NDB product and dev teams to make sure that we are building a solution that fits the NDB proposition, not just tags on and adds on. It actually fits and seamlessly works with it as well. So let's look at the overview. What have we built? So it's purpose built for NDB, as I mentioned literally just a second ago. We're using Nutanix APIs, no agents to install on your databases as well. We are the first and only backup provider for NDB, giving enterprise class data protection. And all this with one-click simplicity. So we can automate backups in minutes and make sure we can recover fast with confidence as well. So that's our overview. It's hopefully going to be a bit more clear about how we do some of those things in the coming slides. But hopefully there's going to be some great questions at the end. But I'm really looking forward to see what everyone comes up with. So let's dive a little bit deeper into HYCU for NDB. So first of all, we're going to remove those manual backup processes. As Raghu mentioned earlier, the whole idea about NDB is, we can innovate at pace and make sure we haven't got DBAs trying to provision 20 databases a day for our devs, right, and them slowing them down. Speed of provisioning in NDB is incredibly quick, but what happens if your backup can't keep up, right? So with HYCU, we can automatically discover NDB, discover new databases, and protect them on a continuous basis as well. We have no workarounds or additional code or scripts needed, right? We're using best practice from Nutanix themselves around the snapshots of disks and volume groups. And again, only HYCU can back up volume groups at the moment. We're only data protection vendor in the world that backs up Nutanix volume groups. We can eliminate that misconfiguration with our native integration. So when Raghu was talking about, the log management and making sure that all those logs are backed up so they can do their Time Machine stuff, all that stuff takes a lot of development, but it's very specific about what it does. So if we have a backup provider that comes in and starts messing with those things, you're not only going to mess up potentially your backups and they're not going to be in the right way or potentially not going to work properly, but also potentially you're going to misconfigure or mess up your production systems because that NDB Time Machine might not work properly as well. So that's why you need a purpose-built solution for NDB. So we ensure that log management is handled by NDB. So we don't give you an option inside of HYCU to enable log truncation, for instance, for SQL. Because if we do that, we're going to truncate the logs, and then Time Machine's going to break, right? So we don't want to do that. So we're going to handle that and let that be handled by NDB. But again, that isn't something that anyone has to configure in the backup space. That is automatically handled by HYCU. NDB use agent disks to do what they need to do inside of their OSs and inside of their databases. They have these agent disks. We automatically exclude those from our backups, because if you don't and you restore over the top of some of those things, it can cause major issues upon restoration. So again, we're trying to restore something over the top of something that's not recommended by Nutanix. It doesn't really make sense. But that's not something that someone has to think about and go, oh, I need to make sure I'm excluding the right disk, because we all know that these databases could have 3, 5, 10, 15 disks. If you exclude the wrong disk, you may exclude some really critical data from your backups thinking you're backing up, and then you go and restore and you haven't got the data. Or even worse, you don't exclude something that's gonna then on recovery not work properly. And then we're connecting those dots to ensure the seamless recovery. So we ensure that NDB continuity and minimize that manual effort. So things like when we're going to restore, we're replacing disks, not the whole VMs wherever possible. Because if you replace the whole VM, that gets unregistered for NDB, and you've got to manually re-register it, right? Whereas if we can keep the VM registered in NDB, replace the disks, that's going to be a lot more seamless, a lot easier for everybody. And then we can then just trigger NDB to clean up the new disk IDs if required. And after that, once we've restored, we'll then tell Nutanix to update the protection domains to ensure that Time Machine continuity. So you can see some of these really small pieces that you think are absolutely really tiny can actually make a huge difference to your overall experience. If we take that Wells Fargo, they've got 100 something thousand databases, right? If they've got to go and manually exclude the agent disks across 100 something thousand databases, right? That's going to be a full-time job for someone. just manually excluding disks from backups, right? And if they miss one, guess what? It's not going to work properly. If they miss one log management tick box, again, all these little misconfigurations at scale can cause real problems. And when we've designed HYCU for NDB, we designed it with some core principles in mind. And that will hopefully flow through into the demo that we see in a minute. So we want to make them intelligently simple. And I use intelligently simple and not just the word simple, because I think simple doesn't do things justice at times. Some things are incredibly intelligently simple, like my iPhone. I think if my iPhone is intelligently simple, it's not just easy to use. It knows where things should be laid out. It knows essentially what I'm going to do next and all those types of things, right? I think if you make something simple, I used an analogy the other day to someone, I can print off every single instruction for me to drive from my house to London, right? And it's very simple instructions: left turn, right turn, straight ahead. But if I've got 500 of those instructions, suddenly those simple instructions become relatively complex. Even though it's simple in air quotes, it can be relatively complex. But something like getting an Uber, I put in my destination, and I don't care about the journey or anything else like that. I just want, my business goal is to get to London, and that's something intelligent and simple. I just put it in and away I go. We're deeply integrated, so we need to make sure all of our products that we build are deeply integrated. So we make sure we support all of the Nutanix ecosystem and all of those real niche things that we need to be able to for NDB, for instance. But we have no impact. We don't want to be building something that you put into your virtual machines or into your databases that causes production to slow down or stun or cause issues, right? That would be literally the opposite of what we need to achieve. We want to make sure that we're almost invisible to organizations, so they don't know HYCU's even running. They're just getting their backups done without any impact, right? And that includes no stunning, as I mentioned, no agents, no additional software or hardware required, right? We just have one box and away we go. We want to make sure it's seamless. As I mentioned earlier, we're really proud of our NPS score of 91. If we build something that doesn't work quite right, or isn't as simple, or isn't as integrated, or does have an impact, we're going to see a massive drop to our NPS score, because people won't be satisfied with the product we've built. So we need to make sure we build something that is seamless every single time. For every single workflow we build, every single business goal that people want to meet with HYCU, we need to make sure they can meet that with ease. Obviously, it needs to be secure. So we support immutability, completely offsite, completely isolated if required as well. Effortlessly scalable. We need to make sure that we can scale to even the most demanding environments. Again, this is why I want to put the Wells Fargo slide in, because everyone can start relating back to that slide, right? If we're a Wells Fargo, suddenly we've got hundreds and something thousand databases. We need to make sure we can scale to match that, right? Because if NDB can scale to that, HYCU also needs to be able to scale to cover those environments, right? There's no point in having a backup product that doesn't scale to the size of the production environment, right? It makes no sense. We want to make sure that you keep control of your data, exactly like the Nutanix differentiator around, database as a service for in the cloud, for instance. You don't keep 100% of control of those databases, right? And in some, backup providers will take it offsite for you, right? But we want to make sure you keep control of your data and you put it wherever you want it, and you apply whatever security principles you want to do. I think that's really important for us, and it needs to be cost efficient. It has to be high performance with a good ROI, but a low TCO as well. So hopefully everyone can kind of understand what we're trying to build and how we're building it, and building upon these principles. So I'm just going to switch my screens, and hopefully I'm going to provide you with a quick demonstration of HYCU for NDB. Right, so hopefully everyone can see that. Raghu, can you give me a quick nod if you can?
I can, but
Cool,
the
perfect.
fonts are a little smaller. So
Brilliant, brilliant. So yeah, I'm logged into HYCU R Cloud now. You can see, so lovely, beautiful dashboard. You can see lab environment, so red everywhere because I haven't maintained it properly. But you can see, we've got protection and compliance, our applications and protection and compliance scores as well. So I want this to be relatively quick because I know we're not too bad on time, but we want to make sure we have enough time for questions and answers at the end. So I'm going to show you kind of like our application discovery process. So I mentioned earlier about, and Raghu mentioned earlier about having the ability to provision really quickly, right? If we're provisioning databases quickly and almost instantly and doing those clones and all those types of things that maybe needs to happen, how do we make sure our backups can keep up, and how do we make sure that we don't have a backup admin who's just swamped with tickets constantly back up this database, right? So the first thing we'll do is look at our sources. So if we come up to the top and we add our sources, you can see we've got all the sources at the top. We're going to focus on our hypervisor today because we're talking about NDB, but you can add your cloud, your file servers, your physicals if you need to as well. But you can see here we've got Nutanix AHV, and you can see here we're using Prism Central, but also the NDB logo. So we've automatically discovered that this Nutanix cluster has got NDB on it. So automatically going to prompt you for some credentials to be able to use NDB. So we know at that point in time. So you don't have to tell HYCU you're doing NDB. You don't have to deploy anything different or set it up in a different way. We just say, hey, you've added a source with NDB. Cool, let's go for it. That's the first part of discovery. Obviously, you only do that once when you add your source. Then if you come into your applications tab, you can see here we're discovering our applications. So as Raghu mentioned earlier, we've got SQL, Oracle, SAP HANA, all these different databases. I haven't got every single one in my lab environment, but you can see we're discovering all these different databases inside of your virtual machines. So how would we go about doing that? Oh, and as you can see, we've got the NDB logo here as well. So you can see these ones aren't managed by NDB, and this one is that we've discovered, right? So you can see the difference there. We know it's an NDB managed database, so we manage it slightly differently. So how would we go about making sure that we discover this? So it's very, very simple. So we come into here. So we come into our virtual machines. Lab environment being slow. And then I'm just going to filter on some machines because I've got loads in here. And we've got some SQL, this one here, right? SQL Server that we've decided here. So essentially we just come up here and add some credentials. So these are credential groups that you add. You essentially assign some credentials to the virtual machine. And guess what? That's what we do. Assign credentials, and then we'll go away and automatically discover whatever application is on that virtual machine for you, whether it's Exchange, SQL, Mongo, Oracle, whatever it is, and it will appear in our application list up here. This is all without any agents to manage, so we don't install any agents, we don't keep any agents there. Completely, simple, easy to use. Add your credentials, and away you go. So that not only automatically discovers, that's going to do it on a continuous basis as well. So if you if you add those credentials to those virtual machines, if something changes, you change that, you add a new VM, put the credentials in, away you go, right? So it's very, very simple, easy to use, and do that application discovery piece. And now if we look at the policy here, you can see we've got a policy applied of bronze. The idea about policies, and everyone says policy-based, right? I want to make sure that I show you how simple our policies are. So if we come into our policies here, so I've got my bronze, silver, gold, whatever it is. You can add and amend whatever policies you want in here, completely flexible. So I created one earlier. I haven't assigned it to anything yet, but NDB gold, for instance, here. So let's go in and edit this one just so I can show you how easy it is. So yeah, give it a name, description, etc., as you expect. So it's a pick and mix from here on in. So you decide you want backup. Yeah, I want backup. Do I want to copy the backup somewhere? Well, yes, no. Do I want to archive that off? Yes, no. Do want to enable this for fast restore? Do want to back up from a replica? So if you're running something at a robo site, using Nutanix replication to replicate that to a central site, we can actually just back up the replica copy. And do want to enable auto assignment? Yes or no? And I'll cover auto assignment in a minute. I think this is where it gets really interesting for me, is this piece here. So backup every. So this is your RPO. So how often do we want the backups to run? How much data loss can I have? I'll just arbitrarily set this to 12 hours, but you can set this to, 60 minutes if you wanted. You could set it to 60 days. Whatever you want of your RPO, whatever your business goals are, you set this to be that for this particular policy. This is unique in a way that most organizations you set up a policy, most vendors, you set up a policy if you will, and then you have to schedule that. So you have to say, I want this job to run every hour. So then you drag it into a calendar, or you say run every hour, whatever it might be. So you've got to do the job management and make sure they run at the right times and over the right windows, etc. Or we don't have to worry about any of that. We simply say, this is my SLA. HYCU, make sure you meet that for me. Perfect. So that's our RPO. And then uniquely, we also allow the same thing with RTO. So this is unique in the marketplace because most other vendors, I think every other vendor, is, hey, yep, we have a desired RTO. You can put that in any way you want. But the only way to really understand your RTO is to do backup restoration, right? So keep recovering backups every week, every day, whatever it might be, and then try and plot your RTO from there. Problem with that is that typically you're going to either not do all of your VMs, you're going to do some VMs, you're going to do from different storage targets. You're probably going to prepare for it. So it's every Thursday on a 3 p.m. We're going to do this one VM and plot that, which is fine. But it doesn't give you real life scenarios. What if something changes if you don't catch it, etc. Right? So I'm going to show you how we make that compliant in a second. And then you decide what retention you want to keep. So 4 weeks, 4 years, etc., etc. It's pretty basic stuff. Then you decide when you want the new chain to be upheld. So after a percentage change in the data rate, so 25%, or after a certain amount of backups. So you decide when the next full gets taken. And then here, I think this one gets overlooked a lot by a lot of people, but I love this one. So automatically select the target for me. So as a user of HYCU, you can tell us which target you want to back up to. Absolutely, you can. But you can also let HYCU decide. So that means these RTO and RPO requirements we've met up here, we're going to pick the best backup storage that you've added to HYCU to meet those RPO and RTO requirements. So suddenly we don't have to worry about performance management because we can say, well, this one's got to be recovered in 2 hours. And we'll say, yep, this is the storage target that's going to be able to recover that workload in 2 hours for you. And suddenly from a capacity management point of view, oh, this one's getting a bit full. So that the next backup can't go there. The next backup's going to have to go to a different place. But it is also going to be able to meet your targets as well. So really, really interesting from my point of view as well. And then we have an archiving point of view as well. So do we want to keep this for long-term retention? That use case that I had earlier where we want to keep things for 7 years, for instance. Probably not best to keep it on the Nutanix cluster for 7 years, I'm guessing. You want to keep it somewhere else, right? Maybe tape or cloud or wherever else you want to keep it. And then last but not least, the auto assignment. So I call this kind of like a protection at the pace of of building out your databases, right? So if you're building like 1 a minute or 2 a minute or 5 an hour or whatever it might be, you automatically tag them with Nutanix categories, and we can add them to this policy. So the minute your VMs and your databases are created, they get automatically discovered, automatically enrolled in the policy, and automatically backed up. So you don't have to worry about doing it manually in any way, shape, or form. So the reason we do backup is recovery, right? So we've got a few different ways of doing recovery depending on what your use case is. So if I come into the application piece here, so I'm just looking at the time. Yeah, I've got a few minutes. So we're going to go through the SQL Server, so the NDB SQL Server. So if we then choose any of our points in time, you can see here that we've got backed up. I'll choose just yesterday's for instance. We click restore, and we've got 2 different workflows. We can restore the whole server or just restore the individual database. So again, down to user preference, whatever it might be. But if we do restore databases, you can see here, we restore the HYCU database, but also here we've got run a tail log backup before NDB restore. And this is really important for that time machine to make sure it works properly after restoration as well. And if we go to restore the whole server, you can see again, restore the NDB managed database server. So we're not just doing the same workflows that we've had in the product. We've built unique specific workflows for NDB managed databases to make sure that we're working properly and restoring data in the best ways possible. And then if you wanted to take this into public cloud, for instance, maybe you want to take it into AWS or Google, for instance, you can simply spin this VM up into cloud if you wanted to. So spin the workload up into Google Cloud, have it up there for a period of time, whatever it might be, and spin it back down again if you wanted to. And last but not least, on the restoration piece. Let's see, cool. if you've got individual files or folders, we can also restore just the individual files and folders from there as well. So maybe it's a config file, maybe it's a, I don't know, a user file, whatever it might be, we can restore the individual files and folders from there as well. So we simply mount the backups, browse them, whatever it might be. Choose your file and folder. Let's choose this one, whatever, client SDK, whatever it might be, and then restore directly to the virtual machine, restore to an NFS share, or download the files locally, your choice. But they're giving you that granularity and flexibility to recover exactly what you want from when you want it. And then last but not least, we have targets. So we give you a choice of any targets, as we mentioned earlier. You maintain 100% control of your data. So you choose exactly where you want to store data. So NFS, SMB, Nutanix itself, so Nutanix storage, Nutanix objects, Nutanix files, whatever you want to use it, right? So all the cloud targets, Amazon S3, S3 compatible, so for things like that. Also, Dell data domain as well. So if you want to have Dell data domain, so we have a data domain added into my lab as well. And you can see we've got retention lock, so that's immutable as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea of, oh, sorry, one thing I've missed. One thing I've missed is the RTO compliance, which I need to show you because I think it's really cool. Maybe that's really sad on my part, but I think it's cool. But so essentially, we have our compliance tab here. So in the policy, do you remember the RPO and RTO we set? Well, that then comes down into this compliance. So if we see a tick here and we hover over, we can essentially say, okay, the last time between backup was 23 hours, 44 minutes. That met our 24-hour RPO that we needed to. And recover within, the policy was set to 5 hours. And we're saying we can recover this file, or sorry, this data set in 24 minutes. No other place is going to give you that level of detail. For every single backup you do, we're going to give you the exact same data. And if something changes in your environment, these will all change to red and you'll get notified that you're no longer in compliance. So maybe if your storage slows down or something happens to your storage or your network links, whatever it might be, and these suddenly take 6 hours to restore, you'll be notified that these are now out of compliance. So every time that you do a backup, you can be sure that you're in compliance, not just at the point of backup, but for as long as we're keeping those backups in the HYCU system as well. So that is the demo done. It was a little bit longer than I wanted, so I apologize, but let's get back into some slides. So I mentioned Dell as a data domain. I just want to quickly run through our Dell integration. So we have hyper-efficient backups, automatically discover, as we mentioned. So we've got the retention lock support, so governance and compliance mode. We can utilize data domain anywhere. So data domain in public cloud or on premises, your choice. And we can use full isolation as well. So we can use the data domain replication to replicate workloads and then recover from those isolated replicated workloads if needed be. And we do support the DD boost protocol as well. So that enables source side deduplication, so for those super efficient backup jobs. And you can protect your entire data estate. So I know we've been talking a lot about NDB, obviously. That's the title of the webinar and why everyone's joined today is to talk about NDB. But that's just a subset of organizations' data. Raghu has mentioned earlier that it's going to be edge, cloud, colo, core. There's going to be that's a modern data estate, but a lot of that is also going to sit in modern apps and modern services, so K8s or in PaaS, but also in SaaS services as well. So you need to make sure that you have the ability and the platform to be able to protect data no matter where it lives, whether it sits in a SaaS service or it sits in an NDB database. You need to make sure you have the ability to do that. And HYCU is one of the best, or if not the best platform for protecting all those workloads. We have 80 plus integrations for SaaS workloads. And I think the last time the Gartner MQ was done, I think the next best rival was 10, I think, or 8 or 10. So, we've got 10x the amount of integrations that any other one else does as well. So data protection for Nutanix and beyond. So we help you discover and visualize your estate with rGraph. And maybe John, if you can maybe put a link to rGraph. I know I didn't send you that earlier, so I apologize if you haven't got it, but if not, we'll send it in your follow-ups. Protect all your workloads, whether it's from in the data center or Nutanix, in NDB or VMware or whatever else you're running, into PaaS, into Google Cloud, into Azure, AWS workloads, or into these SaaS apps, these modern SaaS apps as well, Entra ID, Okta, Atlassian Suite, etc. Recover your applications and data in one click. You saw how simple and easy the UI was to use and navigate. That's the same for across the whole entire stack here. You'll see a uniform UI across all of our data protection use cases. And then the ability to move your workloads anytime, anywhere. We saw the ability to spin that up to AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, whatever you want to use that. You can do that the same, and even do cross-hypervisor replication if you wanted to as well. So if you want to learn more, get started, try it for free. We have the HYCU free trial on the screen right now. So I will leave that on the screen for a few moments so people can scan and take advantage of the free trial if you wish. I'll give it just a few more minutes and while people get their phones out of their pockets and everything else. Perfect. Hopefully everyone's got that. If not, you can find the free trial if you use Google or whatever else, you'll usually be able to find it pretty easily as well. On that note, we will take some questions. So let me just open the Q&A. So we got some answered questions, perfect, from my lovely glamorous assistant, Marco. Marco, are you there?
I am.
Perfect. Right then. So if my cluster's holding NDB management plane have critical issue, meaning the NDB management plane is not available anymore, can we reinstall a new management plane, point HYCU to it, and restore those workloads?
Yep. So the response here is we can. Basically, you can use HYCU to do always in place restore of the NDB managed servers. But obviously, if NDB is not there anymore, you can always clone, or the whole Nutanix cluster is down and you want to rebuild it somewhere else. You can always clone or restore the NDB managed server, the VM itself, or the database VMs, right? You can restore them and then register them simply back into any NDB as well. So that way you can get full recovery.
Perfect. Another question. So can we protect essentially the NDB management plane with HYCU?
Yeah, that is something we get a lot, not only for the NDB VM, right? We get it also for the Prism Central VM as well. Obviously, very important, 2 VMs running in Nutanix infrastructure. The thing is, Nutanix locked this backup protection out of third-party backup vendors because they need to have some specifics done on them before the restore. So we cannot assign a policy and backup the NDB VM as such, and this is why we'll not list it also among the VMs in HYCU.
Perfect. How is how NDB license on Nutanix cluster and also HYCU? So I think that's a how is NDB licensed and how is HYCU licensed as well, I think.
Yeah, I think so. From the HYCU perspective, we are licensed based on the VMs and cores. We don't have any specific special licensing
Amazing.
regarding the NDB, so really keeping it simple.
Maybe I think we're
Raghu, maybe you can take the NDB licensing itself.
we also have core-based license, but we're I think simplifying the licensing model. If you can, I think John is from Nutanix, I assume, right? So so the licensing will be for Nutanix and for HYCU separately as of now. We don't have any integrated licensing model as yet, but maybe an action item for future in case something like this comes
a
up.
bundle or something.
And then the last question was, can we back up and restore some elements like profiles, bracket software, network, database parameters?
So technically from HYCU perspective, right? So when we are backing up the NDB managed servers, right? So the databases, MySQLs, MS-SQLs, and so on of the world, what we will be backing up is a whole server, whole VM as such. So not only the database disks, be it regular disks or volume groups, it doesn't matter, but we will also be backing up the OS disks as well. So when we restore the VM, it will get the restore of the complete virtual machine. So in case of disaster recovery or anything, or even in case of an interesting use case for NDB users is OS disk failure, right? So if NDB itself, the protection domains and its own integrated protection really focuses around database. But if the OS disk, something happens to it, it's much harder to restore. Whereas with HYCU, you would just be able to granularly recover just particular OS disk without ever touching the database. And then HYCU is going to tell the NDB, hey, we did the OS disk restore, log catch up, and everything back in business. So HYCU makes this incredibly easy also to recover from the OS disk failures.
Yeah, I think I answered saying that you're only able to do data disk, but yeah, I think thanks to Marco for the clarification.
Yeah. You didn't. Yeah, that's good. It's good. It's a good question.
And then I think we've already covered. So someone asked, can we back up the NDB configuration? I think, Marco, you've answered that one already by saying essentially Nutanix lock that. So we can't do that. There might be ways that Nutanix can help you, back that up with a config file or whatever. And then the another one is, I think I might have covered it in the talk track, but just for clarification, Marco, are the backups database and application consistent?
Yeah, so definitely from HYCU perspective, the whole
Yep.
point is we need to make sure that the database is consistently protected, but without impacting the log management and log truncation, which is managed by the NDB. And this is exactly what we do. So we make sure our backups and the snapshots which we do are consistent from the database perspective, right?
Perfect.
And obviously, one other thing which pops to my mind and is often asked is, which kind of snapshots are we using? Are we using the NDB snapshots, which NDB already did, or our own? And the answer is we trigger our own V3 API snapshots managed completely by us, not even seen inside Nutanix. This is for multiple reasons, something we worked with NDB engineering product teams discussing a lot, and ultimately the answer was this is a better approach than to utilize NDB's already existing snapshots from NDB perspective and Time Machine.
Yeah.
So we use
Perfect.
our own, create our own, and have yet another copy of your data on a safe location.
Yeah, agreed. Great strategy. And then last question I'm going to take for today is how does HA database restoration work? So if they've got highly available databases. That's a very generic question because it's probably going to be it depends is the answer, but
Yeah, it actually depends, but technically, from the perspective of high availability, you can assign a policy to both. Let's say if this is a failover cluster or availability groups and so on, you can assign policies to multiple of these VMs, and then you can restore also just the database into particular, let's say active node, for example, right? So this way you can achieve a granular recovery of these things as well.
perfect. I think that is all of the questions we have, unless anyone's got a last minute one they wanna dump in quickly. But if not, I think that's perfect. So I'm going to thank Marco and Raghu for your time. Great presentation, Raghu. And yeah, we'll be reaching out. If anyone has any questions, you can reach out to me, or I'm sure Raghu won't mind taking questions. You can find him on LinkedIn as well and everything else. So thank you everyone for your time. And yeah, hope to speak to you all soon, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much, guys, and enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.